The financial news has been absolutely everywhere, and all the commentators and analysts are paying attention to it. The Dow Jones has dropped 800% as a result of the actions of U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, in addition to this, a lot of drops have taken place across Europe, particularly in Germany. All right, what does all this mean? Look at the ongoing situation that we have in the United States right now. U.S. President Donald Trump has continued to apply pressure to countries to demand that they sign new trade agreements with the U.S. In fact, it has also been reported by mainstream news that the U.S. offered a better, which it's a relative term when it comes to Donald Trump, for trade with the UK if they can convince Gibraltar to hold the Iranian ship past the date where they have to make a decision. Now, by the time of this recording, that has already passed, and Gibraltar has agreed to release the Iranian oil tanker because there was no evidence of and this is their own words, saying that there was no evidence of the accusations that were being made against them. So at least this is one positive economic news and make things a little bit, to breathe a little bit easier in terms of the global oil trade, which is a very fragile thing which has to be treated very carefully, or else the market will react in a way that could cause a great deal of trouble. Now, already the United States and the UK are sending warships into the Strait of Hormuz to guarantee their shipments to not be seized by the rightful patrolling authority of the area, Iran. So this is already increasing tensions as it is. And this makes people a lot, or I should say businesses, a little bit more sketchy when it comes to dealing with the transportation of oil and liquefied natural gas through the area. Now, what I think is very interesting is that the country which takes the most oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz is China. So if the United States or the UK wants to take some kind of action against an Iranian oil tanker that's destined for China, that makes things China's problem. And the thing is, China has warships now, and they may decide to join this international coalition to protect oil shipments by sending their own warship into the Strait of Hormuz, which would place them in contradiction with the United States. So now we got three countries who shouldn't be there with their warships aimed at each other over an incident that was entirely caused by the United States lying about an Iranian oil shipment to begin with. And this all creates that kind of instability that makes the gas price go up, that hurts futures, etc. But here's another thing that goes along with the Dow going down the stock market going down 800 points. As it's been reported by CNBC, Bloomberg, other financial news networks, mortgage debt in the United States is now up to about, and some analysts say over, the amount that existed before the 2008 financial crisis. Now, a lot of people are ringing alarm bells about this. Okay, look, we're in a terrible situation here that was what came before the last economic crisis. It sort of is and sort of isn't. I'll explain that. The mortgage debt that existed before the global crisis was turned into collateralized debt obligations. So let's say you gave out $1 million in loans, in mortgage loans. Now, over time, for those to be paid back, let's say with all the interest on, X number of year mortgages, let's say it comes back to $1.5 million. Or maybe it comes out to even $2 million, depending on how long the individual mortgages are. Let's just say for the sake that it's $2 million. What the banks did was they took those, potentially $2 million in debt, turned them into a collateralized debt obligation, and then sold them as a financial instrument. Hey, buddy, you want to make some money? Give me $1.5 million, and this thing will pay out $2 million in the end. And that went out into the financial sector, and then banks bought these different collateralized debt obligations that were promising to bring in more money than they had paid for them, which is how an investment works, and generally how a mortgage works as well. Now, the problem is they keep killing working class jobs, which are what's necessary to pay for these mortgages. In other words, the fictitious value that is finance capital, or specifically, I shouldn't say financial capital, I should say credit. Credit, which in this case would be the mortgages, as is the case with all fictional value, has to be made up with real value that's created during production. And that portion of the value created has to go to the workers in order for them to pay the loans. In other words, to have the necessary real value to make up for the fictitious value that existed as a result of credit. And that's what happened in the last recession. This fictitious value was never paid up because of the job destruction that had taken place as a result of neoliberalism, capitalism in general, the destruction of union jobs, the replacement of full-time, fairly decently paying work with minimum wage part-time work, and then having to carry more than one job to be lamented by Ben Shapiro, that little trust fund baby who's never had to work a day in his life. Pardon me, I got a little bit off track there. So what you have is all these people unable to pay these mortgages because not enough value is actually being created. Well, is that what's happening this time? Have these mortgages that aren't being paid been balled up into collateralized debt obligations that have been sold in the financial sector? And that's how a mortgage crisis turns into a financial crisis. But has that happened this time? Has there been a financialization or mass financialization of these mortgages that have been put out? Have they gone out into the financial sector? That I don't know. It doesn't seem to have happened this time. I think there's regulation in place that prevents this from happening, which may have then been gutted by Donald Trump, because one of the things Donald Trump has been doing is cutting kinds of protections and regulations that try to prevent major like this from happening. I think that's the question that needs to be asked. I think that there needs to be a better analysis of, have these debts been monetized? I personally don't know the answer. I'm sure somebody out there with more financial knowledge than myself would be able to answer that question. But I think that's the key here. Everybody knows there's another recession coming. I mean, aside from the fact that it's capitalism, there's always another recession coming. No matter how proudly or loudly the United States wants to claim there isn't, there's always one coming. And people know that this next one is coming soon, and this one is predicted by many of the top analysts in the entire world. This is by no means my opinion, but the opinion of the economic elite are saying this is going to be worse than the 2008 financial crisis. And of course, it's going to hit us a lot harder than it's going to hit them. So we all know this is coming. The question is, what's going to kick it off? What's going to be the catalyst that sets this whole new recession in motion? And I get the feeling it's going to be Donald Trump. Because already he's had to spend $16 billion to bail out farmers from the retaliatory tariffs that China has already put out. The U.S. claims baselessly that China is taking advantage of the United States, so it puts a bunch of tariffs and demands a new deal. China retaliates, put tariffs back. And now the new ones that China are proposing, Wall Street is saying is an 11 out of 10 that in terms of seriousness and amount of damage that it could do. And already farmers in the United States are struggling because this $16 billion is less than what they would have made had they been able to sell their agricultural products to China. And now China's threatening to just cut them off altogether. No more agricultural products from the US. And that is going to be a very huge thing for the US to deal with. So I think, in my layman's opinion, obviously I'm not an economist. I didn't get a PhD in economics, so I can't call myself an economist. In my very layman's view, it's either going to be something from the agricultural sector, or it's going to be something from the financial sector again. But to get that straight answer, you're going to have to talk to someone who has more financial knowledge than myself. But regardless of what happens, you can pretty much bet that the working class people are the ones that are going to get royally screwed in the end. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.